Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I'm your host, Derek Duker. Before we get started, I wanted to give thanks to all of you out there listening. By the time you hear this episode, our show will have officially turned 1 year old. If you appreciate the show, and maybe even get something out of it, I would greatly appreciate it if you would purchase a t-shirt from our shop at showmyscars.com/shop. I just dropped a new one with my logo on it. I really like it and hope you do too. Your purchase will go a long way towards keeping this show going. For today's show, I'm talking with Nathan Cole, who is the founder of Listener, an app in which you can book a 20-minute session to talk to a real human who is trained to listen with empathy and presence. Not to fix you or judge what you say and do, but simply hear you. I was intrigued by the concept and wanted to learn more, so here's my conversation with Nathan Cole. Man, I appreciate you coming on and being willing to talk about Listener. We talked a little bit about this on the phone, but just to recap for the listeners, what made you want to start Listener?
I heard this stat a few years ago that loneliness was the equivalent on our health of 15 cigarettes a day.
I've heard that same thing, and I can believe it. I know that I can feel it physically when I'm lonely.
It's wild. Yeah, it was the Chief Surgeon General. That was pre-pandemic, by the way. So if you can imagine how much that has increased since we shut the whole world down.
So did you have a background in any mental health professions or anything like that, or did you just start this because?
Yeah, good question. I have a background of going to therapy to help with a lot of trauma.
Right.
And I've helped many people get started in that. Believe there's such a great valid place for it. I did a certification through a Neuroscience Institute up in Virginia Beach that specializes in attunement and validation, but no formal counseling background.
Gotcha. So how would you say Listener is different than any other mental health platforms?
Well, there's a bunch of cool stuff happening right now. It's an exciting time. I think one of the things that you see a lot is chatbots, right? I don't know if you saw this study by the Harvard Business Review this last week, but the number one use case for AI, do you know what it is now?
Yeah, it's just talking to it.
Yeah, it's companionship and therapy. In 2025, it hit the top of the list. So I think there's some companies trying to do some cool stuff in that space, and people are using, and I would dare say even abusing, AI in that regard. But I think what it misses so much, Derek, is the human to human, face to face interaction. So what makes Listener different is that.
And you say on the website that people are trained to listen. So how do you get something like that? How do you get trained to listen better?
That's a great question. It's so funny because I think I could buy a house with all the degrees I have, but I never had a class on listening. Think about that, like how valuable that skill is. And it really isn't taught very many places until I found the Neuroscience Institute. So I'm working there to help develop a certification to where listeners can be trained in these basic fundamental principles. Turns out about 24% of the population are naturally empathetic. And so I think they're great candidates. I also believe it's a skill that can be learned. Naturally, I am not a good listener. I used to really try to connect with people by interrupting them and telling them about how I have similar experience, or even trying to help. And all those natural inclinations to connect go out the window whenever you really learn how the brain works.
Right. Why do you think that is? Because I used to do the same thing. I would almost interrupt them. I try not to do that because I hate to be interrupted, but I do have this natural want to jump in and be like, oh yeah, I also feel that way. And I still struggle to this day not to do it.
Yeah, I think it's very natural to just want to connect, right? And to want to validate. I think, unfortunately, our best laid plans and motivations sometimes have that counterintuitive effect, right? So we're trying to connect, but we're actually shutting people down. The worst part is when we give advice that no one asked for.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm guilty of that as well.
And how does it feel for you when you're just trying to share something and they're like, yeah, have you tried this? And you're like,
Yeah, and sometimes the hardest part is like telling them that I've already done that.
right,
And because I
exactly.
know what they're doing, because I do the same thing, but it's not helpful. And so
Hmm.
what should we do instead? Like, how do you not respond with a piece of advice?
That's the magic question, right? I think it does take some practice, but why don't we just like role play an example? So give me
Okay.
something.
So this weekend is my birthday, actually. Birthdays are
Nice.
very hard for me.
Sure.
I tend to look back, and that's a dangerous thing for me. I look at
Mm.
some of the goals I've set and things, and I don't know why on birthdays, like
But
on any other day.
Derek, don't look back. Don't look back, man. Life is about the future. Honestly, I've had a few birthdays, and actually, I had some terrible birthdays, terrible memories, and I've had some good ones too. But it's all good, man. Just go forward with it. And here's what I do: I go to Silver Dollar City. You should go to Silver Dollar City for your birthday. Have you heard of that place,
Oh,
dude?
I've
They
heard
got
of that
rides,
place.
they got food. So how did that feel when I just interrupt? You're like in this deep emotional place, and I just started giving you advice.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
terrible.
jarring.
Let's try it again. Let's do it again.
Okay. So this weekend is my birthday. And I sometimes have a hard time on my birthdays, looking back
Mm.
at past events or goals I haven't accomplished.
Yeah. Wow. That feels kind of heavy.
Yeah, that does feel a little bit different there. It feels like you give a little bit of space for me to be in that moment.
It feels very different, doesn't it?
Hmm.
I think there's a bunch of techniques. There's actually like literally dozens of types of attunement in the research literature. One of them is like magnifying the negative emotions. So when you say, "Gosh, it's actually kind of hard for my birthday for these reasons," the temptation is, "Oh, let's ask about the content of what he's saying and let me understand why, because we want to help." But it actually isn't as much about the content; it's much more about the emotion. And so me just saying, I noticed a shift in your face. It's like, wow, that's really heavy. If we have more time, just make space for that. And I just magnify the negative emotion. A lot of people want to run away from the negative emotion because it's uncomfortable. But when you talk about the good stuff, like heart to heart, human to human, the challenging stuff, it increases the neuroplasticity in your brain, right? It's
Interesting.
so important. When we get the emotion in the room, that's where change can actually happen, not on the left side of the brain through advice giving.
It almost helped get rid of the emotion rather than if someone was giving
Yes.
advice. And
Yes.
so then I'm faced with another problem, maybe. I don't know. But it definitely
Yeah.
does feel a lot different.
That's interesting because it was only what 2 or 3 words. I said, "Wow, that sounds heavy." Imagine if you had 20 minutes for that, just to create space. I think we can do a lot of good in the world with that.
Yeah, and 20 minutes doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when I think about how quickly you can process an emotion whenever you do face it, because that's kind of the same principles that I use like within meditation is you allow space for those things. And I I think may have stole this phrasing from Sam Harris, but he talks about watching them as like clouds that drift through the sky. They're there
That's right.
and very visible for a space of time, but then they
Hmm.
eventually make their way down the road.
That's right. And what's happening in your brain is that prefrontal cortex and this language center, it's necessary for helping process. So it's pulling it through from the right side where all your emotions are up through a different part of your brain and literally processing it. It's like imagine eating a big steak dinner. It takes time. It has to go through. If it gets stuck, that's a big problem.
Right.
So you described it really well.
Yeah, and so people kind of got a little taste of it there, but what is the user experience like when someone first signs up for a listener?
Yeah, it's a nascent project. So it's in the very early days. Derek, you were one of the very first on. Hopefully, what the experience leads to is people feeling seen and heard. In my own childhood and experience, that's something that I did not get growing up. My dad was an addict. My mother died when I was young. I experienced a tremendous amount of trauma. And then even in my adulthood, in striving, through, I'm a recovering perfectionist, so make a pretty good operator of businesses and been promoted my whole career in various spheres because of being dependable. And so much of that can lead to being unseen and unheard. And so I'm just on a mission, that if nothing else, when people hang up from their listener call, they're like, wow, I feel seen.
That's powerful.
Even if no one else in your world gets you, you mentioned your birthday. But one of the things I often do is I'll go on the Lonely subreddit, and every hour of the day, there's someone posting it. Almost every day I've been there, there's someone saying, today's my birthday, and no one knows.
Oh my gosh. Even at our age, that's a little hard to take.
Yeah.
I guess I'm speaking out of turn here. I'm 34. I have no idea how old you are, but
yeah, it is hard. And, these studies are showing the vast majority of Americans are lonely. They don't have 3 or 4 people in their corner that they can be real with. And I think it's getting worse and worse. And I think the AI chatbots can do some good, but my thesis, Derek, is that it's actually long-term very unhealthy. So the average human connection is a few minutes. Now the AI chats are going for 46 minutes, and the AI boyfriends and girlfriends and the companionship stuff is just like a moonshot. There's just so many people making money in that space. I think humans deserve more than a chatbot.
Yeah, because I think me and you both had said on that call that we also had used AI to talk about our mental health struggles with.
Totally.
Yeah. And just in my experience, there's a couple of things that it has been good for. And it is like, I try to find different supplements because I have a hard time with some of the mental health meds that are out there. Some of the antidepressants and things that they've had me on. And so I use supplements to maybe taper my anxiety or give me more energy. But that's a dangerous game to play with some of those medications. So I've used it to check for interactions, and I've found that to be something that it's decent at. But I have noticed in the past when I've gotten on there and it has both times I've just been lonely, and I get on there and I just say that like, hey, I'm lonely. And for a couple minutes, it does okay. But then it'll inevitably send me a wall of text of things that I can do or, and, it is helpful sometimes. Like if somebody really doesn't have a coping strategy and you notice that and that's a truth, maybe that's helpful, but just spitballing and sending me 10 ideas of things I can do in that moment to calm myself down.
It's go to Silver Dollar City, take a hike, try, take a deep breath. I mean, those are good. There's a place for all of it. Like you mentioned meditation. I think that's awesome. Prayer, awesome. Journaling, awesome. They're all in a sense like, pushing it through our brain. But what the research shows, which I find so fascinating, is that humans have been designed for co-regulation through eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact. And that is the primary way, in my view, that we can actually process this stuff. So even having a session with ChatGPT or, meditating or journaling and then reflecting that back to a human, it does something to our brain that can't be done by ourselves.
I believe it because that's pretty much all I do. I've heard before that I get people to open up or whatever, and I really don't know what that is. But now that you say that, I wonder if it is because I'm looking them in the eye, and that's not something that you get a whole lot these days.
It's sad. I think you're right.
Yeah, because I really don't have any of those other skills that you've listed. What did I say? I kept saying that I was doing the wrong thing. But
well, you're a people person though, obviously, and you get the value of a human. I think we all innately do, but you have a way of showing it, obviously, in what you're building here, and just your vulnerability is incredible. I mean, even when I put you on the spot, you're like, "Hey, this birthday is kind of hard." That's super rare. I think you're in the vast minority of people that would put that on a podcast.
Probably. Yeah. Thinking back, that's a little bit embarrassing to say, but I know that other people struggle with the same thing. And so if I feel like if I can be that person that just opens up and being honest in this day and age is also kind of a rarity. But I think
That's
that
true.
that does help others that struggle with the same thing, because I can't count the number of times that I've been in a tough spot, and what really helps me get out of it is like, dude, don't like, you're not alone in this.
That's
You've
right.
heard a lot of people talk about the same thing, and I don't know why, but that does lessen the burden a little bit.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think it's so brave, and it just shows the importance for connection and community and solidarity. When we share our strengths, it creates competition. I'm good at this, and here's my posting about all my best life. When we share our weakness, it creates community,
Mm.
like instantly.
Yeah. And talking about like some of the things that we're seeing disappearing, I actually didn't have this written down as a question, but I wonder if you think about the same thing. Me and one of my friends talk about third places a lot, and there's all this reporting about the lack of third places nowadays. Um,
Yes.
do you have places you like to go, or maybe you don't want to give them away, but do you have like places that
It's
you like to go for social connection?
it's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is like faith communities. You know, a lot of research is showing people of faith are living much longer, and I have this thought that a lot of that is around that third place, right? Between work and home, where you have real community. I had lunch with a guy today that was telling me pre-COVID, he used to play in sports leagues 3 times a week, was doing all this stuff. And then he looked up 2025. He's like, wait a minute. What am I doing? Like, I need to connect. So he joined a wiffle ball team and,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
cool.
so there's so much opportunities. I am a coffee connoisseur, so I do love to frequent coffee shops. But I think even those third places have been transformed by smartphones to where we have instant access to dopamine hits 24 hours a day. So even to try to talk to someone, as I'm a very big extrovert, but it can be hard, man. It feels different, right, than it did 10, 15
Yeah.
years ago, certainly pre iPhone days.
Yeah.
People used to talk in line. Now we're like crushing email or scrolling stupid TikTok.
Yeah, I actually uninstalled TikTok, and it was very early on too. It was like I immediately realized what they were doing there. I'm like, dude, there's no stopping this. Like, it just goes to the next thing and the next thing.
So I'll give you a quick story from NYU. Professor gets up in front of a Gen Z classroom a year ago and he says, hey, how many of you guys use Netflix? Every hand goes up. He said, how many of you wish Netflix never existed? No one raises their hand except maybe one. He says, how many of you guys use TikTok? Boom, every hand goes up. How many of you wish TikTok was never invented? Almost every hand goes up.
Mm.
Why is it that something like Netflix creates such a smaller amount of regretted time than a product like TikTok?
That's odd, because they also have an autoplay feature, but I do notice it has a. I don't know if they've increased it. There's a couple other streaming apps I've noticed that will go to the next thing, but
Mm-hmm.
much faster than Netflix seems to. I don't know. I wonder if they've changed that.
I have
But
no, I've seen it just continuing with this series I'm watching with my teenager right now, a little throwback one. And yet like the longer form narrative, I don't know, this may be a side quest here in our conversation, but it's different brain cycles, right, that are being hit.
mm,
And and just the regret that people feel after, at least by this, anecdotal NYU guy, it was really fascinating. So I think, yeah, we're slowly killing ourselves. I think it is the cigarettes of our generation, and in the years to come, we're going to continue to see the crisis is at an all-time high. Suicide rates climbing. That's the why listener to your first question. I saw the cigarettes analogy, and then I also saw that life expectancy was going down for the first time in my lifetime.
mhm.
And so I was like, we have to do something. You have to start somewhere.
When you talk about the smartphones out in public, it is just striking. I used to be the same way. It's just it's noticing it at some point, noticing what you're doing and being a little bit self-aware. And so I purposefully will not break my phone out at, even if we're eating out, eating at a fast food, just trying to get in and out. I mean, I try to do my best, and the little bit of resistance there, I've had a couple of interactions, and I actually hadn't thought about this one in a while. I was waiting in line at Walmart to check out, and I just didn't have my phone out, and I was just, I love people watching. I love to see what what people are doing when they don't think they're being watched in public. But this guy I noticed out of the corner of my eye was like looking right at me. So I turn and we make eye contact and we just spark up a conversation. And he was a super nice guy. Just all we talked about, he asked me where I worked, and we just kind of had a little back and forth. And when I left, I had a little pep in my step that somebody just talked to me. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to think of how much of an impact that has. To all my listeners out there who are business owners, listen up. A report from Stanford says 75% of consumers admit to making judgments about a company's credibility based on their website's design. So, what does your website say about you? If your website could use some work, you need Two Oddballs Creative. Web development is much more than just how a site looks. It's also how it performs. Your website needs to be quick, user-friendly, and direct consumers to performing your desired action. If you want to learn more about Two Oddballs Creative and why they're trusted by some of the biggest brands in the Springfield, Missouri area, head on over to twooddballs.com. That's the number 2, oddballs.com, or you can give them a call at 417-986-6332. If you're a loyal follower of the show, you probably remember an episode I've done with Rustin Pangburn. He was the gentleman who was working on a reentry program for formerly incarcerated folks, and he now has a book out called Mindset Matters: From Incarceration to Transformation, a Journey Through Life Experiences and Lessons Learned Along the Way. You can find it on Amazon. Just search Rustin Pangburn, that's RUSTIN Pangburn, and that title again is Mindset Matters. This book is more than a personal story. It's a guide for anyone who is searching for a way forward, whether you're overcoming your own setbacks, seeking a fresh start, or trying to support someone who is. Mindset Matters offers hope, practical advice, and an unshakable reminder that change is always possible. So go purchase your copy of Mindset Matters by Rustin Pangburn over on Amazon today. Do you have any tips for people on to create a little bit of a social connection in their community?
That's a great question. There's like so many ideas flooding my brain. One of the things that comes to mind, Derek, is seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. It's a great, business and negotiation and conflict resolution tip. I use it with my kids, but it's great for community building. So if you come in and you're like, here I am, or you come in and you're like, there you are, that's a big difference, right? So there's an experiment done on a plane I heard recently where they hired a guy to go in and sit down beside a stranger, and he was not allowed to say anything about himself for the whole 2.5-hour flight. So every time they asked him a question, he kept reflecting it back to them. Like, oh, what about you? What about you? And at the end of the flight, they get off and they said, hey, we're conducting a survey. We'd like to know, how was your flight today? They said, it was amazing. It was the best flight. I sat by the most interesting person in the world. And they asked them like, oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. What was their name? And they're like, what do they do for a living? I don't know, but they were just so interesting because the person kept reflecting back to them, right? It's like a reverse charisma. Man, that goes a long way. It has to be genuine, of course, but people are like, if you like people watching, just take it another step to just like people engagement and just like, gosh, your dog It looks so cool. Like, how old is he? People love their pets, whatever it may be, just finding a small way to connect and then just trying to go deeper and deeper.
My daughter's good with that one. She is, of course, loves dogs. And I told her, as long as you ask first, you can just tell me, hey, Dad, there's a dog over here, because it's nonstop. It doesn't matter how many dogs we run into. She needs to pet every single one of them. And so I'm like, just tell me, just give me a heads up. Hey, there's a dog over here, and then just ask first. But yeah, this last trip to the grocery store did the same thing, and boy, those people were hyped when they walked away from my daughter.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think kids have a natural bent for this, that they can lose if we're not very careful in stewarding it.
Ooh, that's a good point. I never thought about that, because I think too, do you live here in the Springfield, Missouri area?
I do. Mm-hmm.
So, and you've got kids, so I assume they go to the same school district that my daughter does. Have you noticed that a lot of the campaigns here recently have been run on like discipline for school board members? I wondered about that a lot, like what caused that, because really our children are a product of ourselves. So like, what are we trying to say there?
Yeah. It makes me think about this stone-faced baby experiment. It is terrifying, but if your listeners want to go search for it on YouTube, a mom had a baby that was, they're filming this whole thing exchange, and the mom just keeps her face like a stone cold. The baby starts crying a little bit, and the mom doesn't react. She just keeps a stone cold face. And then the baby's like looking for attunement and validation, right? So it just starts like more and more acting out to try to get validation. And it makes your skin crawl. It feels so subhuman. It's just a few seconds. But then eventually she caves, right? And leans in and attunes to the baby. Gosh, that's exactly what we're talking about here. The co-regulation, mirror neurons, the right brain connection that's happening between us right now that goes so much deeper than words. That's what kids are missing when they're lost in their screens, or worse, their parents. I don't mean this in a shameful way, but when kids are looking for attention and co-regulation and someone to help them with their emotions, but the parent is just like, yeah, and stuck staring at their phone, what do you think that's going to do in 10, 15, 20, 30 years?
I can't, I don't want to know. And that's the hardest thing. I don't understand how people, like, there's no way that people haven't experienced that themselves as adults and not felt the feeling of being unheard and unseen. It just hurts. And so I don't understand why they've experienced that for sure, and then they continue to do it. Not only do they go on and do the same things, but yeah, doing it to their kids. That is the hardest thing to see when me and my daughter go out to the park. And I'm not saying I've never done that. It's sure. Impossible. But I am very present most of the time with my kid. And that's just a skill you learn through meditation, or a skill that I've learned through meditation. And so when I'm out in the park and she's running around and I look around and I see other parents, like their kids come up and they're like, whoa, did you just see that? And their parents are just like, yeah. But they've never looked up from their phone the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of see the kid, like they don't know what to do with that. And then they just run off, that hurts. That hurts to see, because, I was the same, I had twin brothers born when I was 4 years old. And so from that point on, I was pretty much on my own. Like, sure. My mom did the best she could, but my goodness, like I can't imagine. I have one, and that's hard enough. And so to know that feeling is just getting passed on more and more breaks my heart to see.
I can see that in your face. It does mine as well. I think most of the time, sounds like a big statement, but most of the time children are acting out. I think it's in that lack of connection. And my parenting for my youngest kid, who's 9, I think is radically different than my firstborn, because I've grown a lot in my personal journey and self-awareness. My youngest is now the most emotionally fluid of all my children. So he does have big emotions, a lot of what you call like outbursts for a young one, right? Just like anger and sadness and all the things. But he's getting a different set of feedback from me, some validation and co-regulation. I'll get down on the floor and, dude, it makes sense why you're mad at me right now. And just helping him understand it's okay to be mad and sad and all those things. Gosh, if I would have had that as a kid, I was in my 30s, Derek, until I learned it was okay to be mad.
I know.
Seriously. My dad was abusive, and I thought, I can't allow that in. Like, I can't raise my voice. I can't do anything I don't want to let anger in. Well, that was really damaging to my soul.
Yeah.
It's my brain.
Yeah. All emotions are valid. And that's a hard thing. That is such a hard thing.
And you can hold more than one at a time. I didn't know that either.
Right. Yeah.
I thought, if I was angry, I couldn't be grateful, but you can do both.
Yeah. Yeah. For the longest time when I was first, working on my mental health, I was trying to get rid of a lot of my emotions, and you just can't do that. And I felt so silly. I was like, they were telling me that the whole time. But for some reason it just wasn't clicking. I was like, right. We don't want to get rid of anxiety. Like it was some like inside joke. And it's like, no, you can't. Like that's a motivating emotion. That's, there's so many uses for it. And it's served me well, for the longest time. And then it just, possibly from trying to get rid of it all the time, burnout happened. And so,
that's real.
Yeah, it is so crazy, but and I try not to get onto myself for it. We think, wow, it was 30 before we realized, but I got to be careful because at the same time, it's like, hey, some people never learn that.
That's exactly right. 100%.
Getting back to listener here, long road that we've traveled there. But getting back to listener, so you say you're in the early stages of it. Are you currently the only one that does the listening over at Listener?
That's right. I am the chief listening officer. This is a self-proclaimed title. But I do hope to add some friends. Right now I'm still validating, do people even want this? Right. And is this something they'd be willing to pay for? I think, there's a tremendous opportunity because it's such a big challenge. If this were 10 years ago, I probably would have started a nonprofit. And I really enjoy, I gave leadership to a large nonprofit that was raising millions of dollars a year. And so I think people would give, but it's not as sustainable. And in my view, creating a sustainable business model that solves a real problem in the world that could help create jobs can actually reach more people. So that's what I kind of want to test. I think, certified listeners in the future will be able to like donate their time so they could like give listener credits, or they could actually turn it into a job as well. So that as people want to pay for a space for validation and attunement, someone that's been through the training can come on. And I think if there's an exchange of value there, it can, continue to be sustainable instead of always having to raise capital. So that's really interesting to me. I don't know what that looks like. I haven't done, much price discovery around it yet, but I think like anything in business, if you're solving a real problem, there is a market for it. So it'll be fun journey to see how that works out.
Yeah. And that brings me to another question is how on earth do you listen yourself? And I'm assuming that I saw some reviews on there. So I've seen that you've listened to several people already. How do you not allow that to impact you emotionally? I mean, it's probably impossible, but to be able to not continue to carry that outside the conversation, I guess, is a better question.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot that could be said around that. It's very life-giving for me personally, Derek. When someone has the aha moment, I had a listening session this morning with a missionary, and they were really carrying some heavy stuff. And I saw in their face a transition where he was able to say something out loud that he had never said before. And I saw this big smile and this awakening, and he was just like, wow, I can't believe I said that. Yeah, that's it. He had a space. He had never had a space for that. In 20 minutes, he got something that he had never found. Dude, that's all the hope I need right there.
Yeah, I bet that's huge. I can't imagine how that must feel.
So good.
Yeah.
People bring heavy stuff too, and I think you gotta, I need the listeners in my life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's a good point, is that we all need that. You can't just, like my therapist said, even therapists have therapists. So, well, man, I wish the best for your business. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with me. It's been, I hope we've helped some people. It was definitely a fun conversation for me.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek. I love the concept of what you're building and just showing your scars, like leading with vulnerability. That's what creates community. And, you know, I would love any feedback on the site, trylistener.com. You can go on right now. There are community credits. You don't have to pay anything. You can just jump right into a free session. Or if you want to pay it forward for someone else, you can do that too. But yeah, would love some feedback. So thanks for making time. It's been fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I forgot to make that point, that it is free.
Yeah, just doing some early testing. So we'll see. I would love to have a feature of this over the long haul where people can have access and money would never stand in the way. Because I love therapy. I think there's a huge place for it. I use it, but it's outside the reach of a lot of people who really need it. And even with insurance, there's still challenges. And so this is kind of an additional help, I think, that hopefully will reach a lot of people.